Welcome to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. The question of whether to express your feelings to an estranged adult child comes up occasionally, and it's quite a broad question with different answers that will depend on your situation. So there's not a one-size-fits-all answer to whether to express your feelings to your child. There's no blanket yes or no that will fit for everybody in all situations. So the ideas that I'm going to share with you today about this question are just that, ideas for you to ponder as you come to your own conclusion about whether to share your feelings and which feelings to share and when and how and so on. First of all, there are a couple of ways you might express your feelings to your child. Either you'll send a written or voice message to an adult child who's gone radio silent on you, or you have the kind of estranged relationship where there is some communication back and forth, at least some of the time. So it might actually be a two-way conversation where you're thinking of sharing some feelings. And I think either way, the basic considerations are kind of the same. If your child isn't talking to you, though, you won't be able to change course if you see that it's not going well. So you have to be really sure that expressing what you're expressing is going to serve your purposes and help you reconnect if the communication is all one way. You have a little more wiggle room if you're having a real-time conversation, but damage can still be done. So let's look at some considerations to help you make good decisions for yourself. The first question I have for you is, what kinds of feelings are you thinking of expressing? It's almost never positive feelings that parents are worried about. You know instinctively that expressing positive feelings to an estranged adult child in most cases is a perfectly fine thing to do. For example, expressions of affection, gratitude, joy, excitement for them. These are usually quite harmless and may have a positive impact if they're perceived as genuine. The only two positive feelings that I can think of right now that might be problematic are curiosity and pride. Curiosity about your child's life, as natural as that is, may not be appreciated by an estranged adult child, especially those who've indicated a need for more space. They are not in a place right now to indulge your curiosity with replies, and so unfortunately you might just have to sit with that, which is super hard, I know. Even knowing they're basically safe is a luxury sometimes that you just can't get during estrangement, and that is really hard for most parents. But curiosity can be felt as intrusiveness from the adult child's point of view, and that's why it's often problematic. The exception to that might be adult children who've complained of neglect or carelessness on your part. Also children who've been alienated and kept away from you from an early age. For them, it may be important to know that you're curious about them. They may not reply, but it doesn't mean your interest isn't appreciated for these adult children. As for pride, as in, I'm so proud of you for what you've accomplished, be careful with this one, especially if your child has ever indicated that they believe you have high standards, or that they feel like they can never measure up or be what you want them to be. You might think that expressing pride in them would help them understand that they do measure up. But pride is an evaluation. When you say, I'm proud of you, you might as well be saying, I've evaluated you, and right now you're measuring up. Pride is just one side of the coin. On the opposite side is disappointment. So for some parents, rather than offering any kind of praise, it's actually kinder to ask an adult child how they feel about their accomplishment. Now let's talk about negative feelings, because those are the ones that parents may struggle not to express when they get pushed to their limits and really want to say something to the child. Specifically, I get asked about whether it's okay to express hurt feelings. Being hurt when they don't return your text is very common with estranged parents. It's hard to avoid feeling rejected when you reach out repeatedly and keep getting ignored. Just being ignored for long periods of time can feel, as one of our Reconnection Club members put it, dehumanizing. The resentment of being put in that position can build up, and you might be tempted to let your child know just how thoughtless it is not to reply to a simple, short message with a simple, short message, or not to say thank you for a really nice gift. Expressing your hurt, disappointment, or frustration is a perfectly fine thing to do with your spouse, friends, or therapist. But expressing such feelings to an estranged adult child, while it may relieve some pressure on you in the very short term, may not be a good idea. It could damage your prospects for reconnection anytime soon. This is because, first, very few of us were raised in homes where high-level, emotionally literate communication was taking place all the time. So if the parent feels hurt by the adult child not responding to her text, she's not necessarily going to say, "I feel hurt when you don't respond." She's more likely to say something like, "How would you feel if I treated you that way?" Or, "How do you think it feels to be discarded by someone?" The problem with expressing feelings in this way is that it instantly puts the other person on the defensive and makes it almost impossible for them to hear what you're really trying to say. So before you even think of expressing painful or difficult feelings to your child, ask yourself how much practice you've had using I statements and feeling words. These are not just used to be politically correct. They are way more effective ways of expressing feelings because I statements and feeling words help other people hear and understand us and what we're feeling. So think about whether the way you express feelings is a, let's say, emotionally correct method of doing so. The second reason is it can take you 3 steps back. Here's someone who's already reluctant to engage for reasons that you may or may not understand, but that are very real to them. So talking to them about how their distancing makes you feel places an emotional burden on their shoulders. It says, "I'm hurt, and you need to pay attention to my pain and help me make it better." That may shame some adult children into different behavior, but do you want your adult child to stay in contact with you out of a sense of guilt, shame, or obligation? The answer to that might be complicated, especially if you put up with parents yourself who were much more difficult, and if you never felt that it was right to walk away from them. It might seem completely selfish and wrong and unnecessary for your child to create distance from you. But that's a bit of a digression. All of the anguish you're experiencing throughout this estrangement does deserve to be seen and heard and witnessed and understood and cared about. And you should be able to expect that kind of attention and caring from people like your partner, your peers, or even your own parents, but not necessarily your adult children. I want to underline something here. Negative feelings during an estrangement from your child can't be avoided. You're not bad for having them or for feeling angry toward your child for causing them. That's normal. Wanting to express those feelings to your child is also a perfectly understandable reaction to what you're going through. It's natural to appeal to the person who's hurting you to try to get them to stop. But doing what comes naturally during estrangement is a trap. It's part of what gets parents and children into estrangement in the first place. Everybody's unthinkingly doing what comes naturally, and the relationship slowly goes off the rails. To get out of this dark phase, you've sometimes got to go with what feels unnatural, inauthentic even. I've had parents tell me that it feels like they're playing a game, that they're not comfortable being inauthentic with their child. If you feel that way too, that's okay, but recognize it might mean making a hard choice. You'll have to ask yourself at some point, what's more important to me right now, behaving authentically, or giving my child something she may need from me that doesn't feel completely natural? If you're willing to try experimenting with different behaviors, try some of the following. Don't communicate with an estranged adult child when you're having strong feelings. Always sleep on anything and everything you send to them. Although it may be natural to reach for the phone in your darkest hour, acting on emotional impulse is not going to serve your purpose if your purpose is reconnection. Nor is it less authentic than waiting a day and thinking about it. For more on dealing with emotional impulses, listen to episode 35, Why Rejected Parents Act Impulsively and How Not to. You can find that in your podcast player or at reconnectionclub.com/3535. Know that in most cases, expressing negative feelings to the adult child who's causing them can be a mistake that you might end up regretting. If you're a parent who's been accused of not loving or caring about your child, or if you've never openly expressed emotions to your child, then doing what comes unnaturally would mean that you would express your feelings. So for you, that might be exactly what's needed for the relationship to start healing. If you do choose to share, remember to always use I statements instead of you statements. Ideally, you'll want to ask yourself, will expressing this serve my child? If so, how? If you ask yourself that question and the answer is no, but it'll sure make me feel better, then maybe hold off at least 24 hours. Post in the Reconnection Club forums and ask other members what they think about what you're proposing to do. Typically, you'll receive kind, sensitive feedback from people who know exactly what it feels like to be in your shoes and can gently lead you to the decision that feels truly right, if not exactly natural, for you. Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out reconnectionclub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at reconnectionclub.com.